Today we want to talk about our construction schedule together with my partner, Miss Pes-et. Our original plan was a 3-story building, but since our requirement is a 2-story building, we removed the top floor and replaced the ceiling of the second floor with a roof. Nalis namin to, tapos linagyan namin ng roof yung second floor. Ito po yung ground floor plan namin, tsaka second floor plan. These are the list of activities during this project, together with the nodes and duration. Itong mga nodes na to, makita natin to sa part diagram natin. Next is ito po yung part diagram natin. Ito yung workflow ng activities natin or flow ng work natin. Ang meaning po nito, for example, here in C, we cannot move on to C if we haven't finished activity B, and we can't go to activity B if we haven't finished activity A. We have to follow the arrows. Kung mapapansin nyo po, dito sa node 6, may split path po tayo dito, and ang meaning po nito is that pag natapos natin yung activity A, pwede tayo mag-proceed sa activity F or activity H, or pwede naman sabay. Depende sa manpower natin, magsabay yan. Mag-proceed tayo sa F, tuloy-tuloy hanggang sa G, I, hanggang sa 9. Pwede naman na E to H, tapos mag-stay tayo dito sa 9. Dito naman sa 9, hindi tayo makaka-proceed pag hindi natapos yung dalawa. Kailangan na matapos natin itong dalawa, itong activity H tsaka activity I, para makapag-proceed tayo dito sa node 10 tsaka node 11. Ganun din po ulit dito sa may 12, node 12. Para makapunta tayo sa node 13, kailangan nating tapusin yung activity L tsaka activity K. Kung napapansin nyo po, itong activity M natin, dotted line, meaning po nyan is dummy activity po ito. Sa actual po, ang worth nito wala po. Ang gamit kasi nito, ang dummy activity natin is ilalagay dito para makomplete yung diagram. Kasi kunwari pag dito hindi natin linagyan ng dummy activity, nag-stop tayo dito, meaning nun reach natin ng node 11, finish na yung work kung walang dummy activity. Kaya para ma-complete yan, para makapunta talaga tayo sa tunay nating goal, maglagay tayo ng dummy activity para ma-complete yung diagram. Yun po. Tas itong mga values po na to, ito po yung kanya legend niya. I-discuss ng kasama ko mamaya kung paano niya nakuha tong mga values na to. Next po is the construction schedule. Yung isang box is worth ng 1 week po. 1 week ang isang box po. At kung mapapansin nyo po is may mga overlapping na activities. Tulad nitong foundation tsaka excavation natin nag-overlap. Ang meaning po niyan is hindi mo kailangang tapusin yung excavation para simulan yung foundation. Bakit? Kung sa actual po yan, kailangan nating mag-excavate ng, can say for example, 15 butas hindi natin kailangang antayin na matapos yung pang 15 na butas para simulan natin yung foundation natin. Kasi pag ginawa natin yun, madidelay yung project natin. Sobrang tagal. Another po is, kung napansin nyo, itong sa may second floor slab natin, may nag-overlap na, may sumabay na electrical and plumbing. Ito po kadalasan nakikita natin pag nagpapagawa tayo ng bahay, or yung mga neighbors natin nagpapagawa ng bahay, tapos naglalatag na sila ng reinforcement ng second floor na slab. May mga makikita na tayong parang orange na plastic sa may mga rebars. Yun po is, ang tawag doon, mga moldplex po, mga ganun. Yun po, ang purpose po nun is daanan ng electrical wires. Kasi usually, ang ginagawa is nakapaloob sa concrete yung mga electrical wirings natin. For safety na rin. Mas maganda ang ganun. Another po is itong roofing natin. Napansin nyo po, sumabay yung CHB laying. Pwede nating gawin yung CHB laying habang nagro-roofing. Kasi 2-story building. Kaya pwede nating simulan yung CHB layout sa baba, sa first floor, habang ginagawa yung roof natin. Pwede din natin tong sabayan ng electrical, yung CHB laying and wall plastering. Bago ka mag wall plastering, magpalitada, magtiktik ka na ng daanan ng electrical tsaka plumbing pipes, para pag nag wall plaster ka na, nakatago yung mga ibang electrical tsaka ibang pipes, sanitary pipes. Pagkatapos naman ng electrical, pwede na nating simulan yung ceiling. At pag nasa second floor na tayo na nagsisiling, pwede naman na nating gawin yung first floor na tiles natin. Pag natapos natin yung first floor, mag-move tayo sa second floor, and pag nasa second floor na tayo na nagta-tiles, pwede na nating simulan yung paint finish natin sa first floor or sa outside walls. Pwede na nating simulan yun para hindi sayang yung oras. Tsaka po dito, yung ibang activities natin dito is staggered, hindi siya dire-diretso. Tulad nitong electrical and plumbing natin, may putol sa gitna. Okay lang po yung ganyan, kasi itong mga activities na to, hindi kailangang dire-diretso. Hindi tulad ng slab. Yung slab kailangang diretsong gawin yan, kasi hindi naman po pwedeng magbuhos ka ng slab na hihinto ka sa gitna. Yung pag ginawa mo yun, hihina na yung concrete mo. Yun po. Yung next slide po pala is yung computations, at handle po nito ng partner ko, si Miss Jeneline.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Janwin Rufino. So we will go back again to the birth diagram, and we will show you how we computed for the early start, early finish, late start, late finish, and the float of each activity. So we will use these formulas, and we will go to the diagram. So here is the legend, and we can see here the early start, the duration, early finish, late start, float, and the late finish. So let's go to activity A. Let's first compute identify first the early start and compute for the early finish. So we will use the forward pass technique. Okay, so here activity A is the first activity, so understandable that the early start is 0. So to compute for the early finish, we will add the duration in the early start. So 0 plus 2 is equal to 2. So since activity A has an early finish of 2, then we will adapt this 2 to the activity B. So 2 is the early start of activity B. So using the formula again, given the duration, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. And moving forward to activity C, we have here 4 early start, since the early finish of the preceding activity is 4. So 4 plus 4 is equal to 8. And moving forward to letter D, 8, since 8 is the early finish of the preceding activity. So 8 plus 2 is equal to 10. Moving also again to letter E, same process. So 10 plus 4 is equal to 14. So here we can see two succeeding activities. So here we will adopt also the early finish of the preceding activities. So we can see here in the activity F and H, the 14. So same process, 14 plus 2 is equal to 16. So here in letter G, since 16 is the early finish of the activity F, we will adapt it as the early start of activity G. So 16 plus 3 is equal to 19. Okay, so let's go to letter H also. 14 plus 4 is equal to 18. And to the activity I, since 19 is the early finish of activity G, then we will adapt it as the early start of activity I. So 19 plus 4 is equal to 23. So here also, we can see here the two preceding activities. So which value will we adapt as the early start of K and J? So here, we will consider the highest value. So here we can see that 23 is higher than 18. So we adapt the 23 as the early start of K and J. So 23 plus 2 is equal to 25, and 23 plus 3 is equal to 26. So moving forward to activity M, since 25 is the early finish of activity K, we will adapt it as the early start of activity M. So 25 plus 0 is equal to 25. And for the activity L, 26. So 26 here plus 2 is equal to 28. And for the last activity, since there are two again preceding activities, we will adapt the highest. So 25 and 28, we will adapt 28. So 28 is the early start of activity N. So 28 plus 4 is equal to 32. Okay, so here, the project completion will be 32 weeks. So we will identify now the late finish and the late start of each activity. So we will do backward pass. So here, we will start here until going to the start of the project. So since 32 is the project completion, we will adapt it as the late finish of the activity N. So here, to get the late start, we will use this formula. So late start is equal to late finish minus the duration. So 32 minus 4 is equal to 28. So moving to activity L, we adapt 28 as the late finish of activity L. And also to the activity M, since M is also a preceding activity of letter N. So 28, 28. And we will get the late start. So 28 minus 2 is equal to 26. And 28 minus 0 is 28. So let's go to activity J. Since 26 is the late start of activity L, we will adapt it to the activity J. So the late finish of activity J is 26. So 26 minus 3 is equal to 23. And here also in activity K, since 28 minus 2 is equal to 26. So here in activity I, we can see that I and H. Here in activity I and H, we can see that the succeeding activity is 2. So what late start will we consider? So here the late finish is 23, since we will consider the smallest value. So 26, 23, we choose, or we adopted 23. So 23 minus 4 is equal to 19, and 23 minus 4 is equal to 19. Here in activity letter G, since 19 is the late start of the succeeding activity of G, 19 is the late finish of activity G. So 19 minus 3 is equal to 16, and to the activity F, the succeeding activity is G. So 16, 16. 16 minus 2 is equal to 14. So moving forward to activity E, it has two succeeding activities. So we will consider the smallest value. So here is 14 and here is 19. So what we consider is the 14. So 14 here. 14 minus 4 is equal to 10. And here in activity letter D, 10 minus 2 is equal to 8. And then to activity C, 8 minus 4 is 4. And activity B, 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. And for the activity A, 2 minus 2 is equal to 0. So that's how we compute or identify the late finish and the late start. So we will now move in identifying the flow of each activity. So we'll use this formula. The total float is equal to late finish minus early finish. So here in activity A, 2 minus 2 is equal to 0. And 4 minus 4 is equal to 0 also. And 8 minus 8 is equal to 0. 10 minus 10 is equal to 0. 14 minus 14 is equal to 0 also. 16 minus 16 is equal to 0. And 19 minus 19 is 0 also. And here in activity H, 23 minus 18 is equal to 5. So in activity H, there are 5 floats. So here in activity I, 23 minus 23 is equal to 0. So here in activity J also, 26 minus 26 is equal to 0. And here in activity K, 28 minus 5. So there are 3 floats here. And here also in activity M, 28 minus 25 is equal to 3. And here in activity L, 28 minus 28 is equal to 0. And also in the last activity, 32 minus 32 is equal to 0. So that's how we compute for the early start, early finish, late start, late finish in the float of each activity. So we will now move to the next slide. Okay, so here in this next slide, here is the summary of the of what we have computed a while ago. So here in the total float, we can see that in the activity H, there are 5 floats, and in the activity K, there are 3 floats, and in the activity M, there are also 3 floats. Therefore, there are 11 total floats in this project. So next, we will see the critical path. So we know that the critical path is the longest duration of the project completion. So these are the possible paths for the given project, basing it from the PERT diagram. So here, as we can see that 32 weeks is the longest duration, we will adapt it as the critical path. So it takes 32 weeks for the project to be completed. So showing in the PERT diagram, the critical path is with the blue line. We can also observe that the critical path consists of 0 total floats. So that's all for our presentation.